There are at least 175 types of bias, according to research. But I thought I'd talk about two types that we're all susceptible to. Now, some people think that they're not susceptible to anything, but well, that just proves that they're susceptible to their own bias. So, why should we bother to talk about biases? Because, like beliefs, they slip under the radar. We don't even realize that we're operating from a place of bias. So, like any blind spot, it's really helpful to shine a light on this area. Now, the two main biases that most people operate from are cognitive bias and confirmation bias. Cognitive bias is when we believe something to be true, even if the evidence points to it not being true. Now, the human brain isn't wired to think about probability and statistics, and so we find it easy to disregard even scientific evidence in favour of what we believe. If you want to, you'll find rational reasons to believe anything. Everyone has a library of habitual thought patterns, including judgments, beliefs, opinions, attitudes, and all of these things are the basis for interpreting everything in our life. Even when you know that you cannot experience the past unless it's in your present awareness, the past informs the bias you operate from, and this becomes your subjective reality. You know, if a woman believes that all men are mean, that's all she'll see. And when she meets a new man, she'll think he's mean. So even when the evidence tells us that something isn't likely to happen, we ignore the evidence to believe that it will happen. Think about someone who gambles on slot machines. Now, they may lose 9 times out of 10, but because they won once, they might see the losses as near wins rather than losses. They'll believe that they're going to win, even though the evidence is that they've lost more than they've won. It's the same with playing the lottery. I mean, no one plays the lottery, myself included, to lose. We all play to win. And even though the odds are something like, 1 in 45 million that win the jackpot, and you may never have won more than a few pounds, you ignore the losses because you imagine that you're going to win. And often, when somebody does win a jackpot, they'll say things like, well, I knew it was going to happen. You know, I saw signs. They see signs everywhere and they felt lucky. But the fact is, they had the same anticipation every time they bought a ticket. But the brain can ignore the losses in favour of the win. You know, some people see signs everywhere to support what they believe. They see messages or faces. How many people see a face in the moon? Even though you know logically that the moon isn't one big face. Now, this phenomenon is called pareidolia. And once it was thought to be a symptom of psychosis, but now, well, everybody realises it's just normal human behaviour. Now, you know that you aren't really seeing Jesus on a piece of toast. I mean, it wouldn't make sense. But people still insist that this type of thing happens. People interpret random objects as faces, such as lines on a piece of paper. They see faces in rock and tree bark. You see something that you recognise, and even though logically you know that it can't be true, you believe it. You know, in 2001, NASA's Viking 1 spacecraft was circling Mars, taking photos of possible landing sites for Viking 2, when it spotted what looked like a human face. Now, this led people to believe that there was life on Mars. Fair enough. But this is evidence of our bias, that we thought that the life on Mars should have a human face. Not an animal face, or the face of what many people thought aliens might look like, but a human face. Now, it's clear to scientists that the face on the rock is no more than the play of light on the rock, but we choose to see our likeness. That's cognitive bias. And another bias that we fall into is confirmation bias. Now, you know this one. It's when you want to believe that you're right and you look for evidence to confirm this, to support your belief. People run this bias all the time. When they really want to believe that the world is against them, maybe every hurt, every job they lost, a relationship that ended, everything that they believe to be a setback comes into their mind and confirms that life really is crappy. And then everything around them goes on to confirm this. They read about people that have suffered in the same way. They cue into everything that matters to them in this moment, and they ignore everything that doesn't. Now, Imagine that you were going to buy a new kitchen, and yes, this applies to both sexes, men buy kitchens too. You research the type of cabinet you want, you look at magazines, you decide on the finish of the doors. It could take you weeks. And then you meet up with a friend and you mention that you're about to order your brand new state-of-the-art kitchen cabinets. And she says, oh yes, as long as they aren't shiny black or shaker or stainless steel or whatever you had your heart set on. This can cause you to doubt your choice, because what you were really looking for when you spoke to her was confirmation that you were making the right choice. People run this bias in relationships too. They might have the idea that their partner is going to leave them, and so they just latch onto every word or action that supports that belief. They keep on at their partner, they hound their partner until the partner eventually leaves. And then the person is weirdly satisfied because, after all, they knew that this was going to happen. You can look at 100 things about whatever you want to believe and find the 3 things about it that are true. And then you think that that proves you're right. You ignore the 997 things that aren't right. You went right to the thing that agreed with you. Google is the epitome of confirmation bias. You can find anything you want to agree with you. Take research, for example. You know that I am vehemently against diet drinks. But every now and again, I come across someone who wants to believe that diet drinks are good for them. Yep, they really want to believe that diet drinks won't rot their teeth and will help them to lose weight. And it doesn't matter what research I come up with to support my argument. They can come up with conflicting research because that's what they want to believe. They're able to completely ignore where the research has come from or who has funded the research. They're happy that Coca-Cola are confirming what they want to believe. You can find anything to support your argument on the internet, because the things that are written on the internet don't have to be true. You can find evidence of talking dogs or drum-playing guinea pigs if you want. You want to believe what you want to believe. Horoscopes are the same. Horoscopes work in this way. Derren Brown, the mentalist, ran an experiment with 3 different groups of people across the world. Everyone in the group was given a long and detailed personality reading based on their date of birth and a short interview. Each subject was asked not to share their reading with anyone else, and they were interviewed after they'd had time to study their reading. And everybody said that the reading was at least 85% accurate, that it wasn't vague or ambiguous at all. They said Derren had nailed them. He had seen into their soul. And the subjects were then brought together again as a group a while later and told that they could swap the readings with each other. Then they realised they'd all been given exactly the same reading and that the reading had been written months before Derren had even met them. But what happened is they'd all tuned into what they believe about themselves, and then they made anything that didn't seem to apply to them fit in some way. And this is the case whether you believe yourself to be strong or weak, to have a happy nature or be predisposed to anxiety, whether you think it's easy to lose weight or it's a constant struggle. Everything is from your bias. Now, you may have started to look at your beliefs about yourself and about the world, and you might have started to question whether these beliefs are really yours, and ask yourself whether you still believe whatever it is now. And I'm asking you to look at the biases you're running too. I'd like you to ask yourself the same questions. Recognise how much of your bias is your subjective truth wrapped up in bias, how your bias may have boxed you in, and see that it's now time to step out of your bias. And if you don't believe that's true, well, Google it. Okay.